know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss.
I'm making a sandwich. First.
We're just doing punk news comments on posts now?
Yeah.
No, not Hoobastank.
That's what I should be doing on Twitter. Just replying to people, I'm making a sandwich. Anytime I see discourse.
Yeah, Dylan's way more tapped into the Twitter discourse, and I'm always like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're referring to.
I mute things a lot now.
I also just don't scroll a ton, so that helps. Anywho, I almost introduced this show as the game where no one wins. I had that urge a little bit earlier today.
Oh, yeah.
Our original catchphrase.
Abandoned slogan.
Yeah. Which is our image for our Patreon audio is the graphic that we had made up that said the game where no one wins at the bottom. Yeah, the old format where we were real literal with that random selection stuff. But yeah. Head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/punklotopod. For $1, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. Last week, we did a bracketology on the year 2014, which is where we pit albums released that year against each other in head-to-head competition. I love doing those, but that was one of the weirdest ones we've ever done. It was an odd collection of bands with some strange head-to-heads, but if you want to see what we're talking about, head over to the Patreon. Or you can sign up for the $10 tier where you get to choose the album we devote an entire episode to. So that we will be doing one of those very soon, actually. Next week, we are going to have a guest on the show. And then I think the week after that, we should do one of our patron-sponsored episodes. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, let's get into it. So this is 2 weeks in a row where I basically chose the album.
Yeah.
Through weird set of circumstances that led to us choosing to do our My Bloody Valentine's Day episode last week, where I was just like, we got to pick something. I went ahead and chose while Dylan was working on his car. We tell the story last week. You can check that out.
Yeah.
And now we're actually doing the one that I had selected prior to that. So I had two in a row where it's my choice. But
I guess I'll get to pick a couple after we do the guest in the Patreon.
Yeah. We'll make up for it.
Balance it out.
Yeah. I guess that means that you get to choose our St. Patty's episode then.
Oh, damn it. Gotta waste one. All right.
Oh, yes. Having fun over with scheduling over here. Not going to make the mistake of like not choosing our gimmick in time. So for this week's episode, I was like, okay, we haven't done the 2010s in a minute. We tend to not get great feedback on those episodes because people don't want to hear about music from the 2010s generally.
Yes, for some reason.
So I pulled the year 2014, which I think the last time we covered it, I should pull that up and have that ready. We discussed Roswell Kids Too Shabby in episode 187. And that was in June of 2022. So almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we discussed Dikembe's Mediumship and Reviver's Bicker and Breathe. We did that with Paul DiCiccio of Tor Johnson Records. And that was in 2019. So that was another like 2 years between.
Yeah. We really have avoided 2014.
And that's it. Those are the only ones we've done. So, yeah, I think we learned early on that people were less interested in the 2010s as a whole. But you pointed out, you're like, this is a decade old.
Yeah, it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, everything we talked about on that bracketology and what we're going to talk about today, it's the 10th anniversary year of these records, which in some ways doesn't feel like it's been 10 years. But
that's just time dilation and age. And
yeah.
It's just I'm still 24 years old. No, you're not. You're right. 34 and you've moved like 5 times since then.
But even then, like 2014 is the year I got married.
Yeah. I was married for 2 years by that point.
And I'd been with my now wife, then girlfriend, for 4 years. So
yeah, though, I was kind of thinking about this recently. What does fuck up my sense of time is that, like, and this may be for you as well, like, we haven't had kids.
yeah,
That really does change the, like, your sense of yourself and your, like, lifestyle, because my lifestyle has been very much the same for 10 years. Like, I can do whatever I want, relatively speaking. Like,
yeah, that's true. I think if you did have kids, that it would change entirely, like, time
all I
frames.
would do is work.
That's true too. Well, then that makes time also feel very, like, dilated too. But I guess you would have kids to, like, with their milestones that would break things up.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I just learned that, like, my wife's niece is graduating this year and about to turn 18. About to turn 18. And I'm like, wait, what? How'd that happen? I thought she was still 12. Like, so yeah.
Which I know they say they grow up before your eyes, even when they're your kids. But, yeah, you have a much more stark measure of the passage of time from, if we'd had a kid in 2014, they'd be 10 years old now.
Yeah. Well, I have cats where I'm like, they're only like a year or 2 years old, and I feel like they're 5. That's another weird thing. I guess because they get adult size so quickly that you kind of forget.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm like, how old is this cat? 2. What? I thought he was 5. Yeah, I mean, 10 years. I mean, I guess when you're in your 30s, 10 years isn't really. It's also like what age you were 10 years ago too. On top of that is another thing where you're like,
yeah,
I was already an adult working a full-time job.
Yeah.
That I stayed at for another, like, 8 years or so,
Yeah. The difference, the difference between 14 to 24.
Huge.
The difference between 24 to 34.
But even the difference between 20 and 30 feels like pretty big, depending on what you were doing at 20. But yeah, I guess that's why I like so much of our audience, because a good chunk of our audience is, not to age anyone, over the 30.
Yeah.
Like that's our average. Our average audience is our ages, you and I.
Yeah.
And older. So I guess, like, for someone who, is 40, thinking back on something that happened when they were 30 is like nothing. It doesn't really feel like, what? Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. So
yeah, I guess it'd be interesting to look back at this time period from 10 years from now.
Yeah, that'll be different. So this week's episode is from the year 2014, and I had a few options to choose that I was thinking about selecting to talk about. And before I name some of them, there was just this shade of just, like, gray over all the options in 2014 that I was just like, meh. We say it every year, like, when we run into years like this, we're like, this is a bad year. I think 2014 was actually a pretty bad year. There's good stuff, obviously. Get into some of it later. But I had a hard time choosing. And I think I was going through the list with you on the call, and I was like, what about this one? And you're like, I don't know. Pick something.
I was like, you are the one picking.
And I just wasn't liking anything I was seeing. I was just like, nah, I don't want to talk about that. Ugh. Like, I don't know. When we did our decade in review episode, or best of the 2010s, or whatever we called that thing, I remember us hitting a lull between, like, 2014 and 2017. It felt like we were just like, gosh, this is rough.
Yeah, I guess I tend to forget how early it started. In my mind, it's 2016 and 2017, really, like, a pretty narrow window, but I think it probably is more wider range of years. And it's because of, maybe this is a conversation for the record itself, but we've identified this time period as having an identity crisis if we're talking about punk.
Oh yeah, definitely a very confused time for punk. I think we're still in a confused time for punk, but I think there's a little bit more, the subgenres are a little more defined currently.
Yeah.
Like, we know what emo bands are now. We know what hardcore bands are now. Like, there's a wide range of different types of hardcore, but they still fit snugly in the hardcore umbrella. back in 2014, emo was like, are we indie rock? Are we like stoner rock?
Yeah.
You know, are we power pop? Like, what are we? And hardcore, I think hardcore was in a lull in 2014 in general, because I really didn't see much interesting there. We were like in a post Death Wish world. And I think even like Fest Punk was getting ready to change what it was about to be too. So yeah, there's strange period. There's that identity crisis. You're right. Is a good way to put it. So we went through a bunch of albums on our Patreon for 2014. So I just want to talk about the ones that we considered. Well, I say me, because it was my choice. And one of the records that I was looking at pretty strongly, I remember really enjoying it at the time, but I didn't know how much I was going to be able to say about it. And that is Hard Girls, 1,000 Surfaces, which was that their breakthrough? Is that the one where people were like, this band's pretty good? And we were over there in the corner being like, yeah, we know.
Yeah, they've been really good for a long time. I guess because Isn't It Worse was the only album before, and then there's like the EP.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Summer Vacation split. Yeah, 1,000 Surfaces is kind of the blow up as much as there is one, and it is pretty concurrent with a lot of people talking about Shinobu.
Yeah, Shinobu had a little bit of a resurgence during that time period of people like talking about them, and they're like, "Man, that band was awesome."
Yeah, and then they have a record in 2015. So
yeah, so everybody was like, "Remember Shinobu? They were great." And honestly, like Shinobu and like Hard Girls, I feel like are kind of proto Jeff Rosenstock solo.
Yeah.
Like, yes, Bomb Music History was there first, but what Jeff is doing now is
him singing over Hard Girls.
Pretty much, yeah. Because it's the same guitarist, Mike Huguenot. And he didn't really change his like songwriting style from Shinobu to Hard Girls to Jeff Rosenstock. So, yeah, Hard Girls is very much, thanks a lot, guys. You're why Jeff Rosenstock is what he is now. Sidebar. It seems like people are now annoyed with Jeff Rosenstock. More like people who were hardcore into him for a while.
Yeah.
Are now very annoyed by Jeff Rosenstock. And it's like, oh, y'all are just learning what we already knew too. Like there's a type of person who was already annoyed with Jeff Rosenstock before he blew up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that brand of like, I've never really grown up.
Yeah. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I guess so.
I've seen people kind of call it that way. Like they've kind of described it as growing out of the Jeff Rosenstock's adulting is hard kind of energy.
But yeah, I love that record. I mean, maybe there was a little bit more there to say about it, especially in context with what came after. But I decided to choose a different record. I was considering Restoration's LP3, but we've already covered a Restoration's record on the show before. We did the self-titled, the debut.
Yeah.
Long time ago. Probably like in the first 50 episodes. And I thought, timing is pretty good. You know, they have their new record coming out this year. That's exciting. But at the same time, I was just like, I want to go with something we haven't covered yet. I was thinking of Weatherbox's Flies in All Directions. I want to do a Weatherbox record one day. I think that band is underrated, but maybe not that record. Weatherbox to me represents the true emo time period where no one was listening to true emo. While everyone was paying attention to what was going on with like Hot Topic, Warped Tour type emo stuff, Weatherbox was kind of just like toiling away in obscurity in the late 2000s before getting to like reap the benefits of the emo revival of the 2010s. So there's something interesting to talk about there. But I would choose a different record, probably the Cosmic Drama or something like that, or maybe in the first record. I was leaning towards the final Stiff Little Fingers record, Going Back, mainly because just the record's great, and it would be interesting to talk about a band at basically the tail end of their career. Like they haven't released a record since then, and then they've announced their like final coast to coast US tour is happening this year. So it's interesting to think of that too. Like they're announcing their not a farewell, but like a final big tour a decade after their final record. Interesting to think about too. But that record's really good. And my last option was Pure Reality by Dark Blue. Old John Sharkey III, friend of the show, we can actually say.
Sort of.
We had him on the show.
Yeah.
But he approached us, so
Oh yeah, that's right.
he came to us first. So he's like, "It's time to do it, fellas. Let's do it. Let's record an episode." It's like, okay.
Okay. when Sharky says we're recording, we're recording. Robo wants an Oreo. Have you seen that clip?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Peter Weller is like a commentary, like an interview thing from Making of the RoboCop. You know, like talking to Peter Weller and like someone who was like a PA, an assistant or something on the film, and he was holding a stack of Oreos, and then Peter was like, "Robo wants an Oreo." He's like, "No, Peter can have an Oreo." And Peter Weller just denies that this didn't happen. He was like yelled out at, "Robo wants an Oreo."
But there's video of it, right?
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
They didn't get footage of it, but
do you have anything about 2014 you want to say before we get into the album, or do you want to save it for after?
I was looking at the charts, and I got surprisingly far into them, actually. The first page sucks.
Yeah.
This is so irritating. It's so much stuff that is like, oh, well, it's technically related to punk music. I want to mention that this is the year of the Dude Incredible Shellac record.
Yeah.
That wasn't very good, which I guess people disagree on that. I don't know. There's an Every Time I Die record that year that I think is like, well, that's actually kind of important now.
Yeah.
That I remember coming out from that time period and being like, Every Time I Die is still putting out records? Who cares about this?
Then they entered like one of the weirdest, like they had a huge career resurgence right after this period. They were like really respectable and like critically acclaimed. And then they were just like, and they're an extension of a bygone sound and era.
I've thought about this in recent, like, I guess oftentimes when we look at the charts, we try to skip over the stuff that's like, you know, canceled or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a fucking Swans record. Boo. There's a Youngin' in the Way record that I remember not really caring for. And then like shortly after that, they got accused of something that then like someone else was like, no, that was Magruder Grind.
Yeah.
But like nobody really ever followed up on that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else remember that? And then Youngin' in the Way, like they went away.
Kind of.
Sort of.
Yeah, they went away. The band went away, but then like some of them started a new band. But I don't think it was the one dude. The one dude's gone.
Yeah.
The main guy. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. Like the heathen just stayed gone.
Yeah.
Which kind of gives maybe a little more credence to it was actually Youngin' in the Way.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of that situation.
Anyway, I just remember that from that time period. Like I figure that's worth throwing out there. But since we did the Christmas episode about like every single like half of the bands on that compilation, I was just like, well, we don't have to avoid talking about it all the time. Yeah. I don't want to devote entire episodes to most records like that. But my other takeaway from 2014, and this leads to the blah that you were talking about in struggling to find something to pick. I was going through the charts and I hit like page 3 and I saw that in January 2014, You Blew It put out Keep Doing What You're Doing. And I just remember that record coming out, having so much hype, me listening to it and going, I'm out. That's probably the year where we saw D4 and someone was like, you want to go see You Blew It at Fest? And we were like, You Blew It.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's this era of emo, the Hotel year.
Yeah.
Dad's second record was another one I just had in my head. Free Throw. Like the dullest indie emo bands. It was like, oh, so you guys aren't even doing the fun tapping thing that like got everybody into it. Like you're not even doing that. You're just like singing like the most bored people, using a vacuum cleaner. Like that's what I hate about this era. I think it's the dullest music was the most popular and most hyped stuff at the time.
It's the year of the Braid comeback LP that everyone was like, it's fine, I guess. Did we need a new Braid record? Probably not, if this is what it was.
Was everybody just depressed? Is that what was happening? I mean, I know everybody's depressed all the time, but I feel like depression was just like the mode, the scene, the style at the time, you know?
Yeah, there's not a lot to be excited about.
No.
There's that Sloth Rust record that they're on their 10-year anniversary tour of.
I mean, I guess if we're talking like actually important records, Transgender Dysphoria Blues by Against Me, that's a pretty actually fucking important record. Like,
and a good one, I think.
Yeah, I've heard it.
People regard it well.
I don't love this era of Against Me musically, like this and what's the one with like the chain on the cover, the Shapeshift with Me in 2016, like that stuff. I don't love the way their sound changed over that era, but it's an important record regardless. Like probably one of the highest profile like punk musicians to come out as trans and like releasing kind of the culmination of a lot of the like press and discussion around Laura Jane Grace. Like here is the statement, you know, the true statement, the record. So
yeah,
really important record. Like I don't want to understate how important that album actually is. But for some reason people care more about your modern baseballs and your parquet courts. I feel like that's a retroactive. Like people didn't care about that record when it came out. It's the later one.
I don't know. That record was pretty hyped.
Was it? I have never seen the album cover until like looking at it recently. Sunbathing Animal.
Oh, you know what? This is the year that there's a Perfect Pussy record and a Mannequin Pussy record.
Yeah.
I forgot that was the same exact time period.
Yeah.
And I did confuse both of those bands.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some good shit.
Yeah.
Let's stop wasting time on boring garbage. All right. So I pulled 2014 and I selected Sliding Through the Halls of Fate by the band Crowbait.
You lay awake all night, didn't wanna say I'm right. Break one more, then you write a long review. But then the morning light wants me to blow your mind. Take one step today, it'll do. It'll do.
Long Island, New York. This album was released May 20th on Don Giovanni Records. This is the band's only full-length album, and the personnel on this record is Mike Bruno on bass and vocals, Chris Arena on drums and vocals, and Sal Fiteni on guitar, harmonica, and vocals. And the album was recorded and produced by John Meredith. And I'll get into members and everything about what else they've done later. But 2014, Crowbait, their only LP. Is it the best record of the year that no one talked about?
I don't think that no one talked about it.
Well, my internet searches could not find much about it, but
I don't know if it's because of who we were and what we were into, the scene that we were in, but I feel like there was a level of hype around this record that has been lost to the sands of time.
Is there? I don't
feel like
remember
there
it.
was like this was This feels like it was a punk record that got talked about on like Brooklyn Vegan when Brooklyn Vegan didn't talk about punk shit.
Well, that is true because I found the Brooklyn Vegan post from like earlier in 2014 where they were like, here's the new song from the new Crowbait record featuring members of Iron Chic. So like it was talked about on Brooklyn Vegan and Stereo Gum when the singles were coming out, but also that article written by Andrew Sacker.
Of course.
That guy's been around forever. I didn't realize he was writing that far back, but I also thought he was a lot younger. So was it hype? I don't remember the hype. I genuinely don't remember the hype because no one we know listens to this record or has ever talked about it.
Yeah.
The people we know who love Iron Chic never talk about Crowbait. I mean, because it was such a limited project, but still, this record is one of our 100 and 100s.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite albums of that decade. Like that.
Yeah.
I truly love this record.
It's an incredible record. And it's one that when I think about it, I'm like, that's an incredible record. And then when I listen to it, it's even better than I remember it. Like, I'm like, phenomenal 5-star perfect record. And then I listen again. I'm like, can I give it 6 stars? Are we in the Tokyo Dome? So, okay.
Well, if you go eat a slice of 5-star pizza after, then yeah, it gives you the extra star.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're on an island when we're like, this record's so great. We're just showing it to each other, and there's like nobody else around for us to show it to. we've got big giant beards. Like we run up to each other. Have you heard this record? We both have our copies.
We just keep discovering it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I know it didn't. There was a hype that didn't go anywhere. I do remember that. Like it didn't pan out. It's where I mentioned this before. It's the time period of unbearable hype of the unfulfillable hype, I guess.
Yeah.
This was a period where it was a debut stream was a significant thing, like an advanced stream or even just like advanced like streams of singles was a big thing. You had exclusive. No one does this anymore. Everyone just drops a single and then you just send a press release and they'll go new single from so and so, and you'll see that story multiple places. And nobody does advance album streams anymore. But this was a time period where I feel like for punk there was a lot of PR happening for a lot of stuff. And I think that there was a stretch of time where there was an expectation or a hope that punk bands would get one up. Like you would get, I guess, because we got Against Me going major, we got Gaslight Anthem going major. There was a certain like melodic punk kind of band that we thought like, we're going to get our next Against Me. We're going to get our next Alkaline Trio. And everyone was pushing for that. It like, think of like Polar Bear Club.
Yeah.
Being like super fucking hyped. And then it just went.
Like immediately. People loved that first record. And then they were like, I don't like Chasing Hamburg.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to it at the time being like, they sound like the same record. What are y'all all mad about? Maybe that was the problem. It sounded too much like the same record. But then the third one came out. And then I was like, yeah, you guys are right. This band's not great.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I see what you're saying. I think okay.
And
I got a couple
I don't know. Maybe I was just 20.
go.
Maybe I was just 24 years old and everything felt bigger to me then.
Maybe.
And I'm just jaded now. Maybe there still is this kind of hype. I mean, I see it now, but it's like, oh, this band's blowing up on TikTok.
Yeah.
Is like kind of what I see. And that's about it.
Yeah. And how do bands blow up on TikTok? They don't play the whole songs on TikTok.
The hook.
Oh, the hook's there. Oh, but it was the sped up version.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We got a trending sound of like 10 seconds of the instrumental at the beginning of the song.
Okay, so a couple different directions I can go then. Well, let's pull on. Which thread do we want to pull on? Do we want to pull on the Iron Chic thread, or do we want to pull on the Great White Hope that now we shall never speak their name? Should we set the backstory? Let's set the backstory first.
Yeah.
So, Crowbait was formed. I don't know the exact year they were formed, but they released their first EP. It's actually a demo called 3 Tickle Guys in 2011. Do you remember who introduced you to this EP?
No.
I
I
do.
assume.
Maybe. I was introduced to it by Matt Evans of the band Old Flings, sharing the Three Tickle Guys EP on Tumblr, maybe? Tumblr or Facebook, one of the two. Old Flings, incredible band. We should do their record one day. We could just do a whole career retrospective on Old Flings one day. So he was like, check this out. Doing the voice. Check this out. So it's members of Iron Chic. It's fucking rad. And I listened to it. And I was like, this is cool as hell. And this is 2011. So we're in the middle of 50 bands all doing the Iron Chic sound. The Latterman, the post Latterman wave. And so we're like, more Iron Chic? Wow. I can't believe it. It's so good. Because that came out in 2011. Not like this. The Iron Chic record came out in 2010. So Crowbait was formed to play into some like different sounds that the members of the band were into, especially stuff they were into growing up. That first EP, though, still feels very much just like an Iron Chic record. So Mike Bruno, he was the bassist of Iron Chic. He's also the owner and operator of Dead Broke Records. He's also been in a billion other bands that were all very short-lived, including currently the band Adult Magic. And so like, oh, cool, we got the bass player from Iron Chic, and he was also in Jonesin, which is also very sonically similar to Iron Chic. Chris Arena and South Fiteni were also in the band's Sister Kisser, who were other New York bands very much in the same vein as Iron Chic. And in fact, I listened to the Sister Kisser record Vipers, which is like their big record from like 2012. And I listened to it and I was like, I should have listened to this back then because I loved it. And it's very much in the same lane as the Long Island scene was doing at the time. So that's why Three Tickle Guys sounds kind of like that sound, because it's people doing the same thing. And so eventually they kind of don't do anything for a minute. Shockingly, their WordPress still exists. And I read every single post on it because ultimately there's like 15 posts total, because they would do like a post a month and then like have a month between months too. They weren't like updating it that frequently, but I read everything on it. And then they were like, we got a split single coming up with this. It was like a label or something. They teased for a long time. And then like their Dead Set on Destruction cover for that Husker Du tribute EP. And then that split with that label never came to be, and those songs wound up appearing on the Nona split. And Nona, another incredible band, one of those bands that I guess didn't live up to hype too. We could tie them into the same discussion. And that EP, they start to shift the sound there. That is where there's an acoustic version of the song 83 on there. And so we're moving in a different direction. And so with this record, they went in the studio. And John Meredith was a producer in New York, or still is. And he also produced Teenage Retirement by Chumped same year. And then later did a Quaker Wedding record and then a Somerset Thrower record. So kind of gives you an idea of the type of bands that John Meredith works with. And they get in the studio and they're like, well, we love the Replacements and Dinosaur Jr. and Husker Du. So that was like the main thing that they were working in whenever they wrote this record. So to pull on the Iron Chic thread, this record was released in 2014, which is a year after the Constant one by Iron Chic. So we're in a valley between Iron Chic records. We didn't know how long that valley was going to be at the time. But I think there was this, Iron Chic was one of the bands that was getting that hype that you were talking about. They were that band that was like, hey, this post-Latterman project is super influential. It's like defining an entire scene sound, and then like people across the country, like it's just become this big sound. They're very influential. That record was, the first record especially, was very critically acclaimed too. It wasn't just the punk scene, it was into it. They were getting that Brooklyn Vegan coverage. Then that was a Pitchfork review for that record. So I could see how this record would be like, hey, it's another Iron Chic related project. We're going to hype it. We're going to push it. Don Giovanni has PR money, so they were pushing it. At that time, I also looked up what Don Giovanni was releasing in 2014, and they released Cruel Optimist, the EP by Warriors. They released that California X record, which I remember being a big deal, but I never listened to. They released a Chris Gethard's first comedy record.
Oh, yeah.
And they released a live Screaming Females album, because we're between studio Screaming Females records at the time. So little money there, pushing some punk acts. Like Don Giovanni is like a very interesting label because the type of acts that they've had on there. But they have like good PR and good coverage whenever they put stuff out still to this day. So yeah, I think we were in this. You're right. We're in this like punk optimist. Like, oh yeah, our everything that's tied to this scene and sound are gold. You know, we're gonna it's gonna blow up. It's gonna be huge. And then Crowbait does another EP, Separate Stations. I remember they were selling it at Fest, like the early version of it. Like I don't know if they were tests or not, but they had it there first. And I remember we went and like bought it from the band directly at Fest. It was one of those like, we got to get in there and get that 7-inch. A thing that I don't think happens anymore at Fest. You got to get in as soon as doors open so you can get that rare one. I mean, they were the Dead Broke people were really the ones doing that the most because they did it with Iron Chic. Low Culture, was that the name of that band? Split.
Well, that was also still in the time period of exclusive pressings, limited pressings.
Yeah.
Buying every color way, you know.
Yeah, there was the money in the punks at this time.
I mean, that still kind of still exists, but it's
more in like hardcore scenes and
yeah,
I guess probably emo too.
There's fewer people doing it, participating in that though.
Yeah, in hardcore, it's more about merch drops.
Yeah.
So you're right. We have had the Gaslight Anthem and Against Me and Iron Chic all getting some mainstream press and coverage. So yeah, there is this like. Hey, everybody, pay attention.
And it is a pretty big, like, there's the post-hardcore wave, and there's the Midwest emo thing is big. It's pretty substantial around this time period, too. So I think everything was interconnected. And that's the thing is, like, the post-hardcore wave, the emo stuff, the, like, Against Me, Gaslight Anthem, all of that stuff is connected to the org core, the punk news punk, the fest punk. There's a lot of overlap that was going on in all of those scenes at that time period. It did feel like a pretty significant time period for punk to have something close to a mainstream moment, and didn't really get that far.
Yeah. So this record can be tied in with the Heartland Punk and Replacements core sound that was going on during this time period. I guess it really kicks off with Gaslight Anthem, and it becomes more like in the early days it was more like Springsteen centric. Like there were a lot more Springsteen inspired bands that were making a lot of waves, you know, with the National and the Hold Steady and
yeah,
Gaslight being really big. And then that sound kind of like trickling down into smaller scenes. Bands like Timeshares shifting their sound away from the like Latterman, Long Island punk to doing more replacement-y sort of thing. And so it makes sense why this record was part of that wave. Was it too early though? I don't know. It's tough. When did that Timeshares record come out? Already Dead? Already Dead came out in 2015, so a year later. That was their big shift.
2014 was also the year of the first two Beach Slang EPs. So 2014 is right in the middle of the Replacements core.
Okay, so we're smack dab in the middle then. So, okay, that's our Replacements core. Had Gaslight broken up yet by 2015?
No, they stopped Get Hurt was 2014. So then they stopped the year after that.
Okay.
Or like within the next 2 years, they called the hiatus. But
yeah. So, yeah, you mentioned them. Beach Slang were the next big thing.
Yes. And that was, again, palpable hype.
Mm-hmm.
That it did not pan out.
No. And the funny thing is, I feel like it didn't even pan out way before the cancellation.
Yeah.
It would. I think it became the Weston guy came up with some interesting songs. Cool. 2 EPs really good. Hey, an LP that's really good too. Another LP that's like not as good, but it's still good, but pretty much the same as the one before. And then, oh shit, Beach Slang dude's out of ideas because he just keeps redoing the songs over and over again from everything else.
Yeah. And
I think because Beach Slang was getting tons of press, like they were the next big sound, they were the next big band in this sound. And I think that's where, is that where I guess Jeff Rosenstock takes it from there, takes it away. I don't know exactly what happens.
Well, okay.
Pup does their thing too, and it kind of does a whole side quest thing. But
Pup is a bizarre band, though. Pup is an outlier. I mean, you
Yeah.
could connect them to Jeff Rosenstock a similar kind of energy level, but what Pup sounds like, you're hard pressed to find very many bands that you can really categorize them with. I think there's two kind of things that happen post Replacements fizzle. You get Jeff Rosenstock and calling everything power pop. Suddenly everyone's ashamed to call anything punk.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess it just at that point had carried around too much baggage of just sloppy drunk dudes.
We also can't forget the damage that the Warped Tour punk caused to just the ship of punk music in general.
Yeah. I think,
oh my God.
yeah, at this point, people are real fucking tired of that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's Easy Core that goes for a while. That's still going. I mean, that's a whole silo.
Yeah.
But I think another direction kind of adjacent to the calling everything power pop thing is 2014 was also the year that Hoodwinked by Level Up came out.
Oh yeah.
Slacker Rock.
They were another one that it was like, this record is critically acclaimed. Everybody's talking about it. The hype is immense. And they were like, they had a record called Space Brothers out a few years ago that was really good too. You should check that out. But Hype Machine.
Yeah.
And then they followed it up with a record that was good, but like people weren't like as super duper into.
And then they broke up.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. It's just this period of nobody is living up to the hype. And so then the hype goes away for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it does. Well, it goes to Jeff Rosenstock and it goes to Pup. And there are the bands that make it out and get pretty big and keep going. But
yeah.
But there's only so much room.
Yeah, there is.
At the top.
So, okay. Crowbait in this entire thing. I don't know. I guess you're right. There was a hype buildup for this record that I just wasn't remembering at the time.
But when like I said, it's probably bigger in my memory than it actually was. But I feel like there was something there.
I mean, those Stereo Gum and Brooklyn Vegan articles still exist. And they're still like, there's not a lot of writing about Crowbait in general. And this record comes out. I don't remember anyone talking about it after it came out, though. Like the hype buildup was there, but then like the discussion ended there. It felt like. And you and I are like, this record's amazing. It's one of the best records of the year. And then we carry that on to being like, it's one of the best records of the decade. And I still think it's one of my all-time favorite records at this point, you know?
Yeah. Like I listened to that record a lot in 2014. And then I kept listening to it a lot in 2015. And then I probably still kept listening to it a lot for like the next several years. And I've slowed, it's in recent years, it's fallen out of having been a record that I listened to a lot. But
why did no one else care? I guess is my question. Why were we holding the candle and then everybody else is like, we're on to, I don't know what everybody moved on to.
I guess there's no show. If you go see Crowbait, it's just 3 dudes.
Yeah. 3 tickle guys.
And they probably can barely stand up.
Oof, that was what it was like when we saw Adult Magic like 2 years later or so. It was like Sunday night, like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And it's like, oh, Mike's been drinking like all weekend probably because that's what the fest is. So many drunken people. And he could not stand up. I did pull up the footage, and I sent it to you, of Crowbait playing Fest in 2014.
Yeah.
And they were standing up. They were fine.
It was the daytime. You could see
it was a
daylight
daytime
through the windows.
You could tell that Mike was a little tired though. Like
but they were just dudes. Like there's not a fucking Muppet in a tuxedo.
Yeah.
There's no production to it.
Yeah.
They don't play acoustic guitars live. You don't have that rootsy instrumentation that's all over the record.
Yeah. I mean, I guess ultimately them just being dudes is kind of like it, right? Like it's a side project to bigger bands.
Yeah. And Iron Chic, was still fairly active. And
yeah. I mean, Iron Chic there's not a big story with Iron Chic either. Like they are another band of just dudes that just happen to like, we all have played in like 100 bands. That's like the story with Iron Chic, I guess.
But Iron Chic is especially sing-along music.
This record is too, though.
Yeah, not as anthemic, though.
Yeah.
It's a little more understated at times. There's also plenty of lines on this record that I'm still not sure that I actually know the words.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. There's just not a story there with this band. And not long after, they were pretty much done a year later by the time, this record comes out in 2014. And then by the end of by the same time in 2015, they made posts on their WordPress. They're like, we're going to lay low for a while. And it's like, oh, no. They laid low and then never got back up. Which, it wasn't their main projects. It wasn't not their jobs either. I don't know what any of them do for a living, but I don't think being in bands is their full-time job. I think that's why Iron Chic 2 is like slowed down as much as it has. So yeah, I guess I understand why it's like there's not a story to tell, so it's like not that exciting. But the songs are so fucking good. Like, I feel like that, you've said it before though. Good music doesn't mean just because the music's good doesn't mean it's going to be popular.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, there's only so much that they were going to put into making it be successful. And like for what's essentially a side project, which I don't even know if they even would have thought of it as like, this is my main band, this is my side project. But like certainly Iron Chic would have had more financial obligations to fulfill. So Crowbait like does fall into the category of like, well, we just got to try to sell as many copies of the record as we can.
Yeah. To make, yeah.
So to, just to make up for what it costs to put out the record.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like, that's really it. We don't have to go be tour machines. We don't have to make this band, a huge band. They just happen to get some good PR into it.
What makes this one a little bit more frustrating for me personally, though, is this is the same thing that they've all done. They've all been in like a bunch of other bands that didn't last very long and only did a few things. Maybe it's because there's so much going into this record. Like, this is a full LP. I'm not like, why didn't Wax Phantom take off? Why wasn't Dobler a bigger deal? Why wasn't Small Arms Dealer huge? It's like, I get it. They were Long Island bands who only played basically in New York. Like, they were regional bands. So I never like, Jonesin should have been so much bigger. But maybe it's just me being personally attached to this record and just feeling like, come on, everybody, it's really great. Why aren't you listening to it? I don't know. Because they didn't do anything that any other 2011 to 2015. That's a pretty good run for this type of band. And they just happened to get an incredible LP out of it. And that being said, like, Adult Magic started like not too long after Crowbait, like within like 2 or 3 years. I think the Adult Magic EP is like 2017. So, and that band's great too. I think they're still a little more active. They've proven to be one of the longer running bands, but also they haven't released a ton either. They only have like an EP and a LP. But
it's done like it's my Adult Magic is Mike and Chris.
Yeah. And Jesse Litwa from Broadcaster and Iron Chic.
Yeah. But it's missing the other guy. It's missing Sal.
Yeah.
And I feel like he did. It's a different band. It's of the Iron Chic related bands, Adult Magic feels the closest to what Crowbait is, but it's still missing that thing that makes it Crowbait.
And that's like the twang, right? Like the
it's not as overt of an influence.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just purely my just personal, just like, but I like it. Everybody else like it too, you know.
But this, like, I don't know. They made deliberate choices in the production that I think benefit the songwriting greatly, to where they can do more quieter stuff, slower stuff at times, but they can still go, you know, driving bass tone, you know, typical like gruff punk kind of songs, and they can split this, like they can kind of sit on this fence that I am hard pressed to think of any other band that has really done this the way that they did it, because they've got acoustic guitars on here. There's that crazy slide guitar solo.
Yeah.
Like there's mandolins, I think. And, you know,
that is actually a Portuguese guitar.
Oh, okay.
And that is performed by Lou Fontana from On the Might of Princes.
Oh.
He was also in Small Arms Dealer. He does the slide guitar and the Portuguese guitar on this record.
Yeah.
And then, there's some organ on here too by Justin Williams. And which is like On the Might of Princes, dude, just popping up out of nowhere.
And there's this, I struggle with what to call it, because it certainly feels not far removed from like the Heartland Punk stuff, but it's not Springsteen. Like it's folksier. They do the cover of The Night That Drove Dixie Down by the band. They did, I want to say Crowbait. Maybe it was, I think we saw Crowbait, or maybe it was Adult Magic do a CCR cover at Fest one year.
I don't remember that.
I think it might have been Crowbait. One of the two. But there's a little bit of a swamp rocky CCR. There's a roots rock. There's a NRBQ kind of sensibility. Like it feels like it's digging into what was an influence on someone like Tom Petty. Yeah. Without going directly for like a Tom Petty sound. Though not to discredit Tom Petty at his twangier and folksier stuff as being a pretty likely influence on Crowbait, like a record like Wildflowers. Much more later Tom Petty.
I've got two quotes from different reviews that I found. There's not a lot of reviews about this record. I maybe found four or five, and then some of them are just very, very basic reviews, not much to really say. But I did find two reviews that had something interesting to pull out of it. So Pop Stash did a review. Remember that site?
Yeah.
So their review has a paragraph that says, "Sliding through the halls of fate exemplifies how a group can master a familiar feeling while also doing something new. The experiments with dissonance, rhythm changes, and more complex lyrics ensure that this debut isn't merely a compilation of 11 versions of Gin Blossoms Follow You Down."
Gin Blossoms on the tip of my tongue, for a name that was getting dropped a lot.
Yeah.
During this time period.
But no one a lot of bands are getting that sound like Gin Blossoms, but like nobody was actually sounding like them.
Yeah.
Except Old Flings.
With their Pitch Perfect cover.
Pitch Perfect. Like, wow. They were doing the Gin Blossoms and Third Eye Blind like thing. Perfect. Pop Matters also did a review, and they said members played in raucous bands like Iron Chic and Sister Kisser, so it's easy enough to refer to this as another punk band. But Crowbait's first record isn't quite that, and when it's working, it shifts its gaze from the basement shows of Long Island to the classic rock of the South and the old sounds of Laurel Canyon, among other things.
Yeah.
There's a looseness to these songs that actually helps amp up the tension, and Sliding Through the Halls of Fate becomes an interesting mesh of punk ethos and energy with the jangle and slide of classic rock and country. And I hear that solo, that slide guitar solo, in my head, and it makes me think of like something extremely specific, but I can't like name it or find it. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's one of those just like, what does that sound like? It sounds like something that I'm not able to recall, but it's like, I specifically remember it from the 90s. Maybe it's Tom Petty is what I'm maybe thinking there, but even then, not that. I don't know. It's tough. I have a hard time trying to find that exact.
I mean,
thing.
Mike Campbell's slide guitar is probably like one of the bigger cultural references to make.
Yeah.
You know, and here, this is a thing that is, I think that the Laurel Canyon thing is a good distinction to make, because what feels rootsy and folksy on this record doesn't really sound like alt country.
True. I don't think alt country when I listen to this record.
And it's not even like, it's not that far from it if you really think about it. You can get from Crowbait to Sunvolt pretty fast.
Yeah.
But I don't immediately go in that direction. I go in a different one. And it even feels like hearing this record around the time of being like listening to a ton of Lucero and not really putting Crowbait and Lucero in the same basket, other than they generally belong at Fest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think of this record, I think of listening to like Blue by Joni Mitchell for the first time, you know, kind of in this time period. And not that it sounds like Blue by Joni Mitchell, but I don't know, there's something to her songwriting that I could see being an influence here. But and listening to the band a lot, or, you know, kind of getting into them at this time period as well. Like,
you know, I read one review that was like talking shit on their cover on this record, and they were like, it ruins the energy, it doesn't fit, there's no point in this being here. And I was like, it's still good. Like, what? I mean, I guess like it doesn't feel, it's obvious they didn't write the song. Like, it's one of those songs when you hear it, you go, this is a cover, right? Like, if you didn't know it was a cover, you'd be like, this is a cover. But I don't think it like ruins. They acted like it ruined the record too. I was just like, one, it's the last song on the album. Like, chill. But two, and like, it's pretty good. It just, it has a different energy to it because it's not what they wrote. It's not their song. They didn't write it. So yeah, it's gonna have a different energy. It's a little more upbeat than they tend to be.
Yeah, it's possible they just don't like the song.
I wish people would just say that though. If people act like, oh, this was a mistake, this was a bad idea. It's like, you just not like it?
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
What a mistake! And like, who cares? Shut up.
Because I hear a band influence all over this record that sounds like other songs by the band. Like I hear music from Big Pink being, you know, a record that they were listening to a lot. The first 3 band records probably being records that they just listened to a lot.
Guess how many songs I wrote down as 5-star songs on this record?
At least 5.
I put 8 5-star songs on this record. That is rare. Like, I'll make an album a 5-star album and not have that many 5-star songs on it. Like, I was just like, well, I love this. Oh, I love this too. Oh, you mean the first 3 tracks are incredible? The Ocean, 83, and If I Could. All 3 incredible songs. Crowbait, the title, the self-titled song, or whatever you want to call it. I like it. It's good, but it to me is actually the lowest point of the record. It's just because like it's just this like heavy low end song. It just didn't really fit the mood and tone. That might be the experimentation that they were talking about in that one review. I don't think it's bad, but they follow it right up with Ancient Eyes and Pretty Good Things and Searching for My Boots on the Highway and Cognate. Like 4 amazing songs in a row. I did see one review that was like, oh, they put the slow, boring folk song in the middle of the record with Ancient Eyes. I'm like, you are wrong. That song's awesome.
The slow, boring folk songs, like those make the record.
I woke up this morning with Searching for My Boots on the Highway stuck in my head. They got sick in the restroom part.
Oh yeah, that song gets stuck in my head all the time.
Yeah, always. I woke up with singing that today, and I'm in the shower, and like, incredible song. Grand Saloon is really good. That's like the actual slower song with the harmonica. I like that one. I think A Billion Lives is the best, the last best song on the record. It's the closer on Spotify. They took the band cover off the Spotify version, but you can hear it on the Bandcamp version. I assume they just didn't want to.
Yeah, they just didn't want to clear it.
Yeah, for streaming.
They might not have been able to.
Yeah, but even Deliverance Doll is really good. Yeah, I think this record is incredible, and I love. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it has a variety of styles of song, but feels consistently like the same band from beginning to end. And it's just in that decision to be like to make a record that sounds this way. It's just integrating, like, because there's acoustic guitars on plenty of the faster songs, and it's like there's like tambourine, and at least it seems like it might just be smashing the ride, but
yeah,
like it feels like a record that could have been done entirely acoustic and still been pretty big and hard hitting.
You know what's funny about this record? With the band song, it's like a 45-minute album, and it doesn't feel like it. Like, this record just sails through. And I'm typically the kind of person who's like, I would have trimmed some off. I don't trim anything off of this record. It's 42 minutes on Spotify without the band cover. And some of these songs, are they long? Are they actually long songs, or they just have a lot of parts to them and makes them feel a little longer than they are?
They're all like, Ancient Eyes is 6 minutes long. Everything else is like 3.5. A Billion Lives is 6 minutes long.
Which
3 to 4 minutes generally.
6 minutes song in the middle of the record, and I'm like, fucking awesome song. Like, I'm not complaining about the length of it at all. It's the kind of record that it goes off and I want to listen to it again. Like, I want to put it back on and listen to it from the beginning again. I don't do that.
Yeah.
That is not a thing that I do.
Yeah. Like, if I wouldn't play it again, but I would, out of respect for it, not listen to anything else for a little while. Like, when it ends, it feels final. It feels like I am done listening to music for now. I have heard some of the best I'll ever hear.
You know, it's funny. Today I listened to it again in preparation. I listened to it when I chose it, which was like 2 weeks ago at this point. I listened to it again yesterday to do my notes, and I listened to it again today. It's just like to have it in my head whenever we recorded. And when I finished it, I'm pretty sure I stopped listening to music and just listened to a podcast. Like, even though I was listening to music before I put this back on to revisit it, you're right. There is a funny, like, music is finished for the day. Nothing else will compare. So, oh man,
it's a record that feels like a really good book. It's a record that feels like a good movie.
Yeah,
it feels like a movie you've watched so many times you can't even remember how many times you've seen it, and you still watch it and still love it. It's hard to do that.
Yeah, it is. And you know what's wild? Mike Bruno has 2 of these in his discography. Because Not Like This is another one like that.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, perfect record. Couldn't be beat. I love the Adult Magic record. I don't think it touches those 2.
No.
That's amazing. I mean, yes, he's not like the main songwriter on every single song, but still, he's involved in 2 records like that. Just, this is a record that I'm like, this is a comfort record for me. This is one that I just can put on at any time, any place. This is a Not Like This. This is Perfecting Loneliness for me. This is what else? Left and Leaving. Like, there are just some records that I can just put on no matter what mood I'm in and come out of it being just like, man, that was good. Just like, because a lot of times when I finish a record, I'm like, hurry up, finish the last song so I can start my next record I want to listen to. And this isn't one that I'm like that. I'm just like, it could go on forever. I don't know.
Yeah. I listened to this record before you even picked it. Because when we were looking at the charts and you were mentioning stuff, and I think we saw that one. I was like, that Crowbait record's real good.
Yeah, because I hadn't selected. Like, I was like hemming and hawing for a while there, mainly because I was just like, what do I want to talk about? I didn't think I would get enough out of this record, and as we could see, we've got plenty of content out of this record now. But the other record, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just like, well, if he's not going to pick it, I'm still going to listen to it.
And me listening to it is what made me pick it, I think. I re-listened to it, and I was like, this record is so fucking good. And like, even if this episode just turns into us going, it's really good, and that's it, and we don't have anything else to say about it, then fine. I need to spread the gospel of this album because I feel like it's so underrepresented and under listened and underappreciated. Because I looked back at 2014 in general just to see what else I was listening to, and this and the Bear Trade record, the first Bear Trade record, Blood and Sand. I think I listened to those two records more than anything else that entire year. And that record's amazing. I re-listened to that too, and I was like, God, this is so good.
And I have a lot of distinct memories around this record. Like I just remember listening to it a ton in that time period. But like I specifically remember having the LP, and our friend Damien, former bandmate Damien, coming over. We were just hanging out. We went and saw something at the Fine Arts or the Art House Theater, and then he came over and just hung out at my apartment. And he saw the album cover, and he was just like, let's listen to that Crowbait record. It looks cool. And we just listened. I was like, yeah, it's kind of this like folky punk kind of record. We listened to it. We just sat and listened to it and talked. And like, I remember that has stuck in my head. I remember listening to that record. And I remember listening to it, at least songs from it, a decent amount when we flew out west for the first time and driving from New Mexico to Santa Monica. I'm trying to think if there was another distinct time that I remember listening to this record. I don't know. It was just and I was listening to it a ton when I was when I was first figuring out how to write songs. Like I'm pretty sure I lifted a riff from one of these songs for just the tag of a chorus. And I do remember listening to this record a lot when I was figuring out what I was doing and thinking like, this is pretty close to what I imagine doing, what I want to do with this band, mixing these kinds of elements together. It's a record I've been thinking about a lot even before you picked it. I was like, yeah, that Crowbait record was really influential in a lot of my songwriting. I need to kind of think about that again and how that works. So I should probably send it to the band. They won't listen to it. Or they won't say anything about it. They do.
I don't know. You got to go soon. So let's rate it. Let's give it a rating. What are you giving it?
5 stars.
5-star classic. Absolutely. 1001 albums to hear before you die.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
It feels like such a niche pick, but
yeah, I guess there's a difference between what you feel like everyone should hear versus what you want to hear is a little different, but that's what I'm thinking when I think of 1001. It's in my 1001. It's in my 100. Well, I think that will do it for us. So thank you all so much for listening. I hope you got some enjoyment out of us talking about this record, and maybe you'll go check it out after hearing the clips. And yeah, just outstanding record. You can follow us on all the social medias: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, punklaudapod@gmail.com, our voicemail line 202-688-PUNK, and our Redbubble store, where you can get some mugs and some notepads and some stickers. So that'll do it. Thank you all so much, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.